picking up 2 years later from where we left off. For those that were just tuning in for the first time, this series, Vedic Christianity, was kind of born of Ramakrishna's statement that the Sanatana Dharma contains all forms of worship, those with God as form and those of God as formless, and anything in between. And the notion that Ramakrishna said that many people came to him for instruction from many different traditions, and that when they left, they believed him to have been a member of their own tradition. And that got me curious as to whether the Vedanta could be exposed through Christianity. And so I took up the endeavor of picking up Christian literature and reading it, and to see if I could find the Vedanta, the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion within it. Because Vedanta is not necessarily a religion in and of itself. It's a meta-religion, which means that it can fit into any tradition, any set of practices. So it's kind of the template, and that template can then be expressed in any culture at any time through any given religious doctrine or religious belief or mythology. And so I was very interested in doing that, and to kind of come up with these ideas, I moved for 9 months up to a Benedictine monastery up in West Park, New York, and studied with two of their scholars, educated at Oxford in the UK. So they were lettered. They knew something more than I. And I got to present these ideas to them and to the monastery. They were so welcoming of me. As a Vedantist monk, I went to them in Garawa, and they invited me into their cloister and let me live with them. They didn't put me in the guest house. They didn't make me feel separate at all. They brought me in there, and on the very first day when I was being introduced to all of the monks of the order there was a monk named Lawrence, and one of the older monks, and he was outside in the garden, and I was being walked around by the father. And the father introduced me as Swami Chidbrahmananda, that I'm a monk. And I remember Lawrence had been bending over. He's a rather large man. He stood up slowly, dominated over me, and looked at me up and down, squinted for a moment, and then nodded, yes, a monk is a monk. And he turned around and went back to work in the garden. And I felt so welcome just in that little presentation. And for the next 9 months, they were so kind to me and made me feel as one of them. And I got to share some of these ideas with them whenever we would get something together. They would give me the opportunity to present it, because that was my whole point. I wanted to be there and to share these ideas, to make sure that I wasn't stepping on anyone's toes, that I wasn't blaspheming, or saying something that was ignorant. And through that experience, not only did they accept it, but they got inspired by some of the ideas and some of the readings of the scripture, which I think that the Vedanta provides a perfect companionship to it. I grew up as a Christian, as a fundamentalist Christian actually, so quite a conservative background. And the Vedanta provided for me that overreaching definition of what is the metaphysics of reality, what is the whole story, not just the little pieces. Because one of the things about Christian scripture is that it can be difficult to study and to understand, because the Bible is actually a book of 66 books written over some 3,000 years. Some of them are history, some of them are prophecy, some of them are personal letters, some of them are poetry, some of them are political documents. And it's hard to read that and to get the whole story, to get at what is the underlying truth. You can get all the different components, God as an incarnation, and love is the most important thing, and the letters of Paul that kind of give you good instructions on practice and whatnot. But it's difficult to get the whole image of what the underlying reality is. And that turns out to be very important for actually getting to some of the meat in there, some of the deeper things in there. One example, just a trivial example, is that story of the foolish man who builds his house on the sand and the wise man who builds his house on the rock. Of course, as growing up, I was always told, well, the rock is Jesus, and that's what that means, and the sand is anything that's not Jesus. But in reality, if you read the Vedanta and understand that the sand is the changing world is the world of thoughts, the world that exists in mind. And the rock is that absolute unchanging, the shrine in the heart, the two components of God, the unchanging, unmanifest reality, and God, the personal God, the expressing God, the vibrating God. I like to say that it really taught me, that parable showed me that God is a noun. God as the unchanging is a noun, a divine principle. He is love, he's not loving. He is wisdom, he's not wise. He is existence, he doesn't exist. The noun of God is what we are in our fullest manifestation. We are loving, and we are wise, and we exist. And that became very important to me because those became 3 love letters that I hold on to. I know that God has not left me because I exist. I know that God has not left me because I can recognize and express love. I know that God has not left me because I can learn and transcend my mistakes and clear out my ignorance to know the truth. And so it was this constant reassurance that I and the beloved will always be together, that I cannot be separated and he cannot separate, and he will not leave me. And that's important because quite often the scriptures use the metaphor of God, separating from us or going away from us. And the first problem with that, the reason we know it's not true, is not just because I'm saying it, but because God is everywhere present, right, and always perfect. And that which is omnipresent, where is he going to go? If he's everywhere, how is he going to get away from me? It's impossible. And that is part of faith. That is part of grace, to be reassured and know that there is no separation between you. It is only us that looks away or forgets the presence. And so it's always up to you to remember the presence and have faith in grace and to find your value of self in that grace, that you are beautiful and perfect and worthwhile, not because of your doings and your accomplishments, not because of a set of conditions or circumstances that you define yourself by, but because the image of the beloved is the source of your creation. God has put himself in you, and that value makes you an heir of God. If you don't have that acceptance of grace, you're a beggar of God. And that's a difficult road to walk, being the beggar of God, feeling guilty about your sins, feeling resentful about the requirements, and interpreting the will of God as being separate from yourself and something that you have to give up, something precious to you, to take on someone else's ideals, when in fact God's will is the maturation of your own will, the purification of what you're really looking for. When you think you wanted to be a rock star, God understood you just wanted security, and you wanted strength, and you wanted infinity. And so he, in his will, has that well defined. So he sees your will to be famous, your will to be rich, your will for pleasure, your will for anything. He understands that that will is an expression of your divine nature in the finite, right? He knows that all of your desires are really desires for your true nature, that your desire for lots of friends and partners is your desire for oneness, that your desire for money is a desire for security, that your desire for power is your desire for safety, your desire for good health and longevity is really your desire for your immortality. Because that's our nature, all of those things. We are infinite, we are ever free, ever pure, never been born, never died. We are an unconditioned and perfect love, right? We forget this. We believe ourselves to be a body and a mind. And so we try to express this isness that we know, this isness of an unconditioned love, this isness of an ever-free self, an immortal self. We start trying to express it through a limited, a finite world, and you can't express the infinite in the finite. And so we pick things that become symbols of this to run after, thinking that they will give that to us. We see that in the Garden of Eden, right? when Eve looked at that tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is actually a metaphor for egoism, because it's only when you have a will separate from the divine will that you have good and evil, right? You've got the divine will and then you've got everything else. And so Eve, in that moment when she looked at that tree that she was told not to eat from, she makes 3 mistakes in a row, and this is a repeating, continuing story in this moment. We are in the Garden of Eden, and we are being tempted by this world, right? This fruit that stands there. And we look at something through the senses, and the first thing we do is find it beautiful. Ah, that's a beautiful thing. Now, if we stop there and look through the thing and see the beauty of God manifested in the thing, then the story doesn't have to go any farther. We still maintain our oneness with the beloved. We still sit in paradise. We still enjoy that wonderful infinity with no insecurity at all. But there was a second step, and that second step was that it looked like it would be good for food. It would look like, I want that. I want it. I want to own it. I want to take it into myself. And the third step, she said she thought that it would make her like God. Right? So through all of that, the little bit about the serpent and the tree, he gets her off on her left foot because he misrepresents God, says, oh, God told you can't eat from any of the trees in the garden. She's like, no, God said just one. And before she gets finished, he says, do you know why he doesn't want you to do that? It's because he knows then you'll be just like him, and he's threatened by that power of you. And so he gets her confused, gets her to forget that she is already created in the image of God. She cannot be separate from that image of God. And she thinks that in this fruit, she will become like God. So she takes that fruit and she eats it, right? And then the trouble starts, right? We get the curse. And the curse is not really a curse. It's not like God is the evil witch that now he's going to punish you for having done that. You're simply going to get the consequences for believing that you were the body and the mind, and that fruit was something that you reached outside of yourself through your senses for something to make you like God, for something to fulfill you, to make you what you already felt yourself to be, but had forgotten. And so you reach out into the world to try and find your fulfillment. And what happens? Well, the first thing is they realize they're naked. What does that mean? They realize they're small because they've identified with just a body and mind. They're no longer one with everything. They're no longer totally secure in that oneness. Now they're small. And the most tragic thing that follows after that is that when God is walking in the garden in the cool of the day, he's calling for them, and they hear him calling, and they hide because they're afraid. It makes you afraid of God because God becomes other, and you no longer know that infinite love, that unconditioned love, that infinite grace. You no longer know that camaraderie with the beloved because now you have a will that's separate and apart from God, and you live in fear. And so what happens then? Well, then you're destined to what? To till the dust of the earth for all the days of your life. Why? Because now you have to fulfill your desires. You have to go through your senses for your fulfillment because of your own decision. And if you go through your senses for your desires, it's an infinite undertaking because there is nothing there outside of yourself that can make you like God. And that's what we're all doing, going to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day for what? To pay for our cars, our children, our houses, our college, our hair products, our makeup, all of these things that we think make us better, that we think make us whole. And that is the stress until what? There's another tree in the garden, the tree of immortality. And God does not want you to live immortally as a person who's hungry and needful and afraid. So he puts a cherubim at the gate of the garden with a flaming sword. And what is that flaming sword? Desire. So you have to overcome your desire to return to the Garden of Eden, to return to that wholeness within the heart, that shrine of the heart. You have to overcome that desire to go in and eat of the tree of immortality and to be with your beloved, to find your fulfillment, all the things that you sought and longed for through the toil of all your days in life comes to you freely and abundantly, purely. I don't know where this is coming from, sorry. Where it just comes from that return to the garden, the return to your perfection, the return to your wholeness, to your fearlessness, to your freedom, to enjoy the beauty of God without fear, without separation, without hunger and need for anything separate from yourself. And so that is kind of an introduction to the idea behind Vedic Christianity. So we use these divine principles to give us a supporting structure, a supporting knowledge, so that we can understand the Christian scriptures, since the Sanatana Dharma includes all forms of religion, God with form, God without form, and all practices in between. And so we bring the truth that each time that God incarnated, it was God who incarnated, incarnating as Buddha, incarnating as Rama, incarnating as Krishna, and as Jesus. That it was not disparate, separate people coming, which we perceive it that way because that's how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as trapped in place and trapped in time and trapped in personality and body. And so when we see another body, we think that person is equally trapped there. But Ramakrishna, when asked, what are you? What is an incarnation? He said, I am a hole through which God can be seen. An incarnation is not a thing. It's not a personality. It's not a presence. It's not something trapped in time and space. The incarnation is an absence of what? Egoism. It's an expression of divine love. And by looking at that incarnation, you're not seeing a body-mind, a personality, a character in history. You're looking through a hole. And what do you see? You see the divine beloved, the infinite, through that hole. And so God is not coming to create little puddles of religion that then can fight about who's right. God is digging a river that is giving ever deeper and ever wider in our understanding. And that when the book of Hebrews said all scripture is inspired by God and useful for teaching and for reproof and for training in righteousness, I was raised being taught that was the Bible. The impossibility of that is that when that book was written, there was no Bible. The Bible didn't come around to Christianity for 300 or 400 years after Jesus. And so Christianity is bigger than a book. Christianity is also the Sanatana Dharma, right? It is also a Veda. And Ramakrishna or Vivekananda says that by the Vedas, no book is meant. So what is the book? The book is the I am. If you take this moment and you see it properly, you can write the Bible. If you sit in this moment without ego, it will crystallize for you into the Quran. It will become the scripture that will take you home, that will return you to your nature, to that freedom of God. And so we study the Vedas as the moment, and we take all of this knowledge that God has given us every time he's come to visit in his purest form, to give us hope and to give us a better understanding of what and who we are according to the time, place, and imbalance that we're suffering from. One time he looks like Buddhism, one time he looked like Islam, one time he looks like Christianity, but in reality he is simply the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion in which everything is contained. And so Vedic Christianity is simply putting Christian ideology, Christian philosophy, Christian doctrine into its original and home context within existence as a whole, and not in some little puddle left by a footprint of a man in the sand in time. It takes it out of there and gives it back to the Spirit, which is infinite, timeless, and beyond particular. All right, so tonight I wanted to go through, since it's just a one class, I thought I would pick a different little section and go to page 117, look at chapter 8, which is called On the Lowly Esteem of Self in God's Sight. Oh, a terrible, terrible title to misunderstand. One of the things that you always have to understand when you approach Christian scripture as a Vedantist is that the Christians call human nature, they identify human nature as being a post-fall. After Adam and Eve make that wrong decision, that's human nature. That we are sinful, that we are ignorant, that we are wrong. But Adam existed before he fell. Eve existed before she fell. And the Vedantist says, no, that is human nature. that infinite freedom, that image of God that lies within you. And, so for us, for the Vedantin, to say that I am a sinner, we're not talking about your divine nature, the self that we refer to in Vedanta. We're talking about who you think you are. That is the thing to be despised. That is the thing that is weak. That is the thing that is small. That is the thing that has no merit, because it's separate and apart from God, which is impossible. It just simply doesn't exist, which is the worst thing. So he says here, the disciple is speaking. He says, I will speak to you, Lord Jesus, I who am but dust and ashes, right? Dust and ashes is what? It's the body. The body's made of dust and ashes. Those vegetables you ate, they came as a product of the dirt, the water, and the sun. You eat them and they become your body. You identify with your body, they become you, right? And so you, as this lower self, this ego self, are nothing but food, right? You're created from food, and you'll become food again when you lay this body down. Something's going to feast on you and be very happy they found you, right? If I think myself any better, you stand opposed to me, right? Actually, we stand opposed to God. But that can be described from either side if there's opposition. If you believe yourself to be body or mind or anything with a condition or a circumstance, then you are in ignorance. You are Eve looking to fulfill yourself through the consumption of something outside yourself. Something you do is going to make you better. Something you understand is going to make you better. And this is something that everybody's in danger of, is that we have been tricked into thinking that we are chasing something that's going to happen on some beautiful day in the future. I'll be enlightened, right? Some distant day in the future. If you place something in the future, when does the future get here? The future never arrives. The future is a concept of mind. So you've simply taken a reality and laid it somewhere where you'll never reach it, into the future. The ego loves that self. Why? Because then it can put you on this quest where it's in charge in making you perfect, making you reach God, making you practice, making you meditate, making you study. And every time you study and every time you practice, you become a little bit more proud of being a great practitioner, a great knower of the Vedas, a great speaker of Sanskrit. And these things slowly accumulate on the egoism and its success on the journey. And in fact, you're getting farther and farther and farther away, right? In his books, Suzuki says in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, he says that the Buddhist doesn't sit to realize God. The Buddhist sits to realize that he's already realized. So within you right now is your realization, full and ready to go. Already done, already completed. It's here in the shrine of the heart where metaphorically sits the unchanging absolute, Shiva. Here, already completed. Here there is no change, there's no noise. Shakti is here, it's in mind, the world of thought. And everything that we're seeing and hearing and experiencing this moment is just a thought, right? We say, no, this table's not just a thought, this table exists. No, it doesn't. And how do you know? Because you look at that light right there and you'll say, oh, we're all looking at the light. No, we're not, right? That light never gets to your brain. You never perceive that light. That light gets converted into biochemical information, or however the senses work, at the back of your eyeball there. And that information goes to your brain, and then your brain creates a symbol for that information. And what you're looking at is your own mind's symbol of light for you. And then you say, yeah, but that light comes from outside. I say, you don't know where that light comes from. Right? You say, well, it comes through my eye. I say, well, your eye is much a symbol for the source of light as that light bulb is for light. Right? So you have no way of knowing that there's an external world, which is a very thankful thing, because actually the scriptures and the sages tell us there is no external world. There's one without a second. Vivekananda, when he says, I am not in Alameda, Alameda is in me, is teaching us that lesson. Because it's a beautiful lesson, because it tells you that everything in this room right now is not material. It could look like if you were dreaming this room, if this room was in a dream, this would not be a wooden table. You could scratch it and it would act like wood. You could put it under a microscope and it would look like wood, and you could see the cellulose and whatnot, the conditions of wood, but it's still not wood. This tells you that the waking world that you exist in is equally composed of dream material, of mind material, as the dream world is. So you are living in a mind. You're living in the mind of the beloved, right? And you are a thought in God's mind. And if you want to play with this and take it to its nth degree, you are God's attachment to the thought of you. God's attachment to the thought of you imbues you with Satchitananda. He believes himself to be you, right? And so he lives your story as you. And enlightenment is God detaching from the thought, which is seen from our perspective of ourself, returning to oneness, to that one without a second. And we come to realize that we lived in a universal mind, just holding a segment of it as our own and limiting ourselves to this thought of love, of wisdom and being that God imbued with that identity. Now, did all that come from here? Absolutely not. I just was running down the road to kind of play with these ideas and to show us this wonderful, marvelous reality of how infinitely immanent, how infinitely intimate God is with you, how close you are to your realization and to your freedom, and to not lose sight because of the story of your ego, the story of the thought of you, right? It's the difference between being and being me, right? Last night I went to a wonderful party. I was very uncomfortable. It was very, people dressed in very formal clothes. There were lots of upper echelon people there. And I walked in this wrinkled, disheveled outfit and having no qualifications of my own to be there except the invitation. And I was very, very uncomfortable, and I couldn't quite get my balance out of it. And so this morning when I came into the shrine early, I went to Mother and I said, what was going on last night? What was that? Why couldn't I find myself there? What was that? And Mother said, she said, in metaphorically, of course, Mother says to me, she says, you didn't go to that party last night. You went as a thought of yourself in that party, right? You weren't being there. You were being you there. So you were identified with yourself as a man with no qualification, as a man dressed in, this odd outfit. And then you wandered around the party of your own volition, looking for comfort, trying to talk to people, trying to find something in common, hoping you were saying the right thing, feeling insecure because you said the wrong thing, and all of that. She said, if you had gone there and remembered that I told you to stay here in the shrine, then you would have known I was with you, that we were not at the party, we were. We just are. You would be. You wouldn't be Swami C. You wouldn't have taken the story and the identity and the conditions and the circumstances of this idea of yourself into the party. We could have been there together. And had you remembered that I was there, and had you remembered that I told you to stay here, your mind would not have wandered out there, and I would have brought the people to you that you needed to talk to, and I would have taken you to the people that you needed to hear. But as it were, you didn't remember me until this morning, and you didn't think to ask me why your discomfort, why your insecurity, until this morning. I was there the whole time. I was available for you the whole time, and you just never turned to me. And so you felt the consequence. You felt the curse of the garden. You were naked, you were afraid, and you were looking outside for your comfort. Welcome home, right? So the disciple says, I will speak to you, Lord Jesus, I who am but just dust and ashes, because we are only a disciple and only separate from God when we believe ourselves to be this body-mind, dust and ashes. If I think myself any better as an ego self, if I try to depend on any condition or circumstance of this separateness, you stand opposed to me, and what is more, my own sins bear witness against me. My own discomfort, my own insecurity, my own pride, my own anger, all of these things bear witness to my worthlessness if I identify with the particular and limit myself by circumstance and condition. This evidence I cannot deny, but if I humble myself, if I let go of this egoism, this idea of separateness from you, admit my insignificance, admit the fact that my desires are not fulfilling me, admit the fact that I'm always hungry, that no matter how much money I make, I spend it and need more, that no matter how many people I'm intimate with, the pleasure is gone and becomes a memory and only serves to remind me of what I don't have, that everything that I've been searching for leaves me with nothing, that I cannot fix my problem in this world, I can only distract myself from it. And so I engage myself in these pleasures, I engage myself in these intoxications, I engage myself in these things, not because they do anything, but they help me forget my pain, which is there for reasons I do not understand and the solutions for which I do not know. If I humble myself and admit my insignificance and rid myself of all self-esteem, right? Self-esteem meaning the belief that I, as an individual and separate and apart from God, am going to get this together. If I get rid of that and regard myself as mere dust, the mere dust that I am, then what? Then your grace will come, right? I become aware of that infinite grace. I become aware of my being an heir and not a beggar of your love, right? I come to know that fullness and that wholeness. And then your grace will come to me and the light of your understanding enter into my heart, right? And light is what? If you go to Eckhart Tolle, he had this experience, a spiritual experience, where he said he saw clearly and crisply that light and love were the same thing, right? What a beautiful idea. It is light in this world that gives all life, that gives us all vision, right? The light is the love of the beloved. And so again, if you want more than those 3 love letters that we started with, now you get a 4th love letter. You can always sit in the light of the sunshine and see the love of God embracing you always. Turn on the light of your room and be reminded this is the love of God surrounding me, right? What's even better than we take that to the Vedanta and we understand that I'm not seeing a light from outside. I'm seeing the light of consciousness through the symbol that my mind has created. I see the light of consciousness. I see that light of consciousness is the presence of God. And I know that the presence of God is love, right? So you get your 4th love letter from the beloved in constant reminding that I am light, I am love, and that I am within you. I am the light of the consciousness that lights your dreams, lights your thoughts, lights your being. I am your existence. Then your grace will come to me and the light of your understanding enter into my heart, so that through perfect knowledge of my wretchedness, right, a full knowing that there is no separate I, ultimately, that I am not without you, all self-esteem will be lost and the depth of my own nothingness. There you show me what I truly am, what I have been and what I have become, for I am nothing and I know it. I left to myself, I realized then that I am nothing and that all is weakness and imperfection, as long as we maintain that attachment, as long as we maintain that insistence, which is really hard to let go of, right? Really hard to let go of. You see, we were constantly attaching to things. And what does attaching to things do? Well, it creates a very stubborn duality, or triality, or quadrality, or quintality within us, right? When you attach to cake and the idea of cake, when you say, I don't want a piece of cake, now there exists something into you that, just like God identifying with the thought that is you, imbues you with being, with action, through love, then those thoughts that you attach to, you imbue with existence. You imbue with a motivating action. right? And so what happens? That thought of cake argues with you. You believe it to be real. Through your attachment, you have given it part of your sentience. And now you have voices in your head, one belonging to cake, and one belonging to your longings, and one belonging to your lovers, and one belonging to all of your faults, and the voice of what your mother yelled at you and what your father yelled at you. But through that attachment, you give them life, and you remember them, and you experience them, and they argue with you, and they accuse you, and they point at you, and they leave you feeling small and broken and incomplete. And once again, you reach out to find some distraction from this because it's something you can't get rid of. You don't understand why it's there and how it can be. And you get lost in your suffering, right? But when you come to know the nothingness of this, the futility of having these attachments, the error that you made by thinking you had to go outside of yourself to fix something, to make you whole and to make you complete, when you begin to let go of looking and searching out there, and you turn around to the light within yourself, and you discover the beloved love of God within you, that which motivates everything, that which has become all of your desires when you looked outside, now become their own fulfillment when you look inside, and you find the divine, right? And we find it through neti, right? I'm not the senses. I'm not the mind, I'm not this body, I'm not these longings, I'm not these conditions, I'm not these circumstances. And by knowing that, we back up one step at a time into the very lap of the divine, into our beloved Father, if you see God that way, your beloved Mother, if you see God that way, or your beloved anything, if you see it any other way. There you show me what I truly am. But the moment you look upon me, right, the moment the I am becomes apparent to you, right? That's the name of God. Remember when Moses says, "Oh, it's all great and good. You want me to go to the Pharaoh and ask him to have you let your 3 million slaves go free?" He's like, "Just exactly how do you think he's going to listen to me? Who am I? To tell him that." And God says, "Tell him I am has sent you." Right? And Jesus reiterates that in the New Testament when the Pharisees surround him and demand, "Tell us who you are." He uses the exact phrase, ego eimi. No doubt about it. He used the name of God to identify himself, and they took up stones to kill him, to throw at him. Right? So this I am, which is your existence, the only problem is that we don't stop at I am. We add attribute after attribute to that. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm Jewish, I'm American, I'm 60, I'm, gay, I'm straight, I'm in between. Whatever these things we identify with, none of them are true. You are the I am. You are the image of God, the direct reflection of the divine. And so this egoism simply keeps adding attributes to the end of that incorrectly, because all the things you're identifying with are merely thoughts, right? Because everything that you are looking at, experience, seeing, hearing, tasting, and touching and smelling at this moment is only a thought in the mind of the beloved. But you are that. You are the whole mind. You are the container of everything. And this imagination of a body is the same as when you enter into a dream and you become a body. It's one of my favorite things to remind myself. We think, oh, renunciation is so hard. Nonsense. You renounce completely and entirely every time you enter into your dream, every night of the week. You enter into that dream and you renounce the waking body. You enter into that dream, you renounce your waking history. You enter into that dream, you renounce your loves, your families, your friends, your monies, your house, everything is gone, and you feel no remorse, you feel no loss, you feel no pain whatsoever, and then you just take on a whole new body, a whole new story, a whole new set of memories, a whole new story, and you move forward freely without any effort whatsoever. That's the biggest clue that God could give you about what you are. You are the I am, and you can be anything. And you do it every day, effortlessly. So when the ego tells you it's difficult to renounce, you should laugh. You should think how ridiculous that I should think that's difficult. I do it as I fall asleep. I do it thoroughly and completely, with no remorse and no loss, which is exactly what you will find out when you renounce anything in this world. I remember my first night in the monastery. I'd gotten rid of everything, walked in with just a bag in my hand, and even that bag turned out to be worthless because I was given a white pair of pants and a white shirt to wear, right? And I remember that night I went in, I was told, this is your room, and I looked around this room, and this wasn't my room. I wouldn't have put that picture there. I wouldn't have bought those books. That bedspread is hideous, you know. And whose pillow is that anyway? It's flat, right? But this was now, I understood my room. And I cried myself to sleep that night, terrified, because I had emptied my accounts, I'd given away all of my possessions, and I was now in a room that was mine, but it wasn't mine. And I was terrified of what came. And that next morning when I woke up, I realized I'm still perfectly me. And I've never felt that renunciation. I never felt a loss. I never felt a longing for any of those things. I was just in a new state of expression, a new sense of being, a little bit closer to the I am, because now I wasn't rich, or I wasn't this, that, or the other. Now I was nothing. I was a monk, right? And if you're thinking about being a monk, that's the first very important lesson. If you think you're becoming something by becoming a monk, you will not last as a monk. You are becoming nothing. You are making yourself available to any dream that Mother wants to place you in, that the divine wants to put you in. And it's yours to practice non-resistance, to accept what is. And I sit here turning into a hypocrite as I say these things. I understand, you know, this is a quest for us. But don't be afraid, and don't think you can't do this, and don't think it's too difficult, and don't think it's beyond you, because that is a trick of ego, because that will keep the ego in charge. The ego will be happy to be in charge of your spiritual life. You know, the ego will tell you, you have to meditate more. That's not enough, meditate more. And then you'll meditate more, and the ego will be like, I'm a great meditator. I'm really good at this, right? And it'll start collecting. So it drives you to things, it takes responsibility for it. What does it become? It becomes your karma, right? It's not God who's collecting your karma, it's you. And it's not God who's keeping track of your karma, it's the mind, right? We know that from 1 Corinthians, which hangs on the wall just outside the dining hall. Love keeps no record of wrongs, and God is love, right? So it's you that is keeping a record of your wrongs. It's you that is demanding payment. It is you that is placing yourself within time, space, and causation as an ego self. Set down that ego and you're free. God never cared. He was never Santa Claus in the sky. He always was freedom itself, love itself, grace itself. There you show me, that's where you did that one. But the moment you look upon me, I soon become strong, right? As soon as that I am looks upon me, as soon as that attention is within me, as soon as that awareness enters into me, I'm strong and filled with a new joy. How wonderful it is that I am so quickly lifted up, instantaneously. The Divine Mother tells you, you can have your realization this very moment, if you want it, right? If you want it more than the story you've invested in, if you want it more than the education you paid for, if you want it more than the respect you're earning from others, if you want it more than the company of your lovers and friends, if you want it more than the things you've symbolized in family and events, if you want it more than the desires you've planted in these imaginary days in the future, if you can let go of all of that right now and want this, it's yours. It's not an attainment. It's not a process. It doesn't have to be a process. You know, you can sit and work on untying a knot for your whole life, or you can cut it. And Mother says, cut it. Let go at the very bottom. If you can't or you're not willing, you're not lost for your hope. Then it becomes a process, right? But it becomes a process because you made it one and you want it to be one. And you have to do your discernment so that you can let go of your hopes and dreams without losing anything, so that you can let go of your circumstances and conditions that give you value. You can let go of that. Because to receive infinite grace, one thing is required: infinite humility. Because if there's any part of you that believes you can do this, that you can earn this, that you can attain this, Mother will let you try. And when you come to suffering again and again and again and again, one day you will weep in the deepest despair and say, I can't do this. And very quickly it says, you are filled with a new joy, because finally you're ready to accept infinite grace, because you've let go of everything that you thought you had and could do and could be. And grace then is yours in an instant, full and overflowing. Filled with a new joy, how wonderful it is that I am so quickly lifted up and so lovingly supported by you. I, who of myself tend downward to earthly things, right? Given to the mind and given to the body, you mistake the body's desires for your own. That's what we call selfishness. You mistake the conditions of the mind for your own. And we talk in those terms, right? I'm depressed, I'm happy, I'm lonely, I'm hungry, I'm sick. No, you're not. You're the I'm. You're the I am part of that. But all of the other attributes you can imagine besides I am belong to either body or belong to the mind. Right? So that's part of our inner discernment. When you feel the need for something, say, gosh, is that coming from spirit? Or is that coming from body or mind? And one of your very quick observations is that the spirit needs nothing. None of your desires originate in spirit. All of them come from mind or come from body. And you are not body, and you are not mind. You are the container of the whole. Right? But if you believe yourself to be body-mind, you tend downward to earthly things, to the dust that keeps your body alive, to the dreams that keep your mind agitated and active. Lord, your love is the cause of this, which goes before me and helps me in all my necessities, right? So your love is the cause of my new joy, my new freedom, this confidence of looking inward and finding the image of God within you, finding that light, that companionship, the presence of the Mother, the presence of the Father within you. It protects me from those grave dangers to which I am most prone to succumb, right? I have lost you, and myself too, by my disordered self-love, right? By my disordered love, not of the spirit self, but my love of my ego self. When the Christians talk about self, the lower S, they're talking about ego self. So it's our self-love, our love of our ego, our love of our story, our love of our narrative, of our being, right? By my disordered self-love, by seeking you again, I found both you and myself, right? Why? Why did you find them both at once? Because they are both the same. You are the image of God. You are the beloved. You are that which you seek. Sri Nisargadatta says, do you not understand that it is your quest for your desires itself that binds you? Right? Stop. To go looking for something, you have to assume you don't have it. Right? If you went looking for God, if you came here tonight looking for God, you made the first mistake, not knowing that you are that. Right? Not knowing that if you took your eyes off of the fruit of the senses, off of that beautiful thing in the tree there, that knowledge of good and evil, that if you had not looked at that and believed it, you would never have forgotten that you were already in Eden. You were already in the cool of the day, walking with your beloved, enjoying an infinite love and a wonderful traipse through eternity. And if you had not forgotten that, you wouldn't now have to go seeking for it. And this is for everything. I remember one time I managed to have a good meditation, right? And right about 3.5 seconds after I realized that I was having a good meditation, of course, the awareness of myself having a good meditation took my eyes off of the nothingness, as it were, that was allowing that good meditation to manifest in me, unblocked by my egoism. And suddenly it was gone. And then I made the gravest mistake of all. I went looking for it again, right? I objectified it, placed it in front of myself and thought it was something I could go get. Tried to go out through my senses for another great meditation. But great meditation only happens when you surrender, when you let go of everything, right? It's something, a very important point. We don't meditate, we don't do our spiritual practice to get something. If you're doing that, it's no better than wanting a donkey or wanting a bigger house. If you think that it's something that you can go get or something that's not a part of you that lays out there to achieve, you just become a spiritual materialist. There's no satisfaction in that, right? So what do? You sit and you accept grace. Little by little, you try to imagine a love that's unconditioned. You've never seen it in this world, so you have no evidence of it. You have to use your faith. And your faith isn't just believing something that has no proof. Your belief is believing something to be true that you know that you brought in with you. And what do I mean by that? It's like the idea of immortality. If you didn't bring that into this world with you, where did you learn it from? What did you see that was immortal? What have you seen that was infinite? What love have you seen or experienced that was unconditioned? What perfection have you ever known in any condition? All of these notions, the notion of an ideal, the notion of an unconditioned love, the notion of immortality, the notion of freedom, you brought them with you. They are you. And you've been trying to manifest them and recreate them in the finite for your whole life. You don't have to. They are you, the real you. Let go of the notion that you need to seek and find and be. That's what Vivekananda said, stop seeking God. He's not in front of your senses. You're not going to find him that way. Stop seeking God and see God. Accept. So we sit in our practice to see God, to accept the presence, and to shut up everything in the mind that is telling us contrary, to bring our mind to a single point so that we can lay it at the feet of God and surrender and accept in that moment our freedom, our enlightenment that we've been carrying here in a wonderful place called the Shrine of the Heart for our whole life, but living here, defining ourselves from the outside in and placing us in the world of change where the foolish man has built his house. And we live there, and every time there's a storm and every time there's a big wave, everything gets destroyed. We get torn down and we have to rebuild. When all the time we had a rock with a house already ready to go, sitting on it. And all we had to do was move from here to here and to experience being, non-resistance, accepting everything in this moment as the company of my beloved. Sitting in this moment and knowing that I'm free, I'm loved, I'm full. And in that we understand that life is not a quest to get or to achieve or grab or to hold on to. Life becomes a momentary expression of a divine principle. That the purpose of life is not on a line of going and attaining something at some point in time, but life is an eternal moment, a point. And in that point, your only fulfillment comes as a byproduct of living in accordance with your nature, which is the image of God. To live in accordance with pure love, unconditioned, to live in obedience to a wisdom, and all of it through this being. And what is being? Being is having no definition and accepting it all. Accepting it all, taking this moment, whatever is given to you, good, bad, pleasant, or unpleasant, taking it, creating something beautiful, and giving it back. Right? In the same way, I remember when I was a kid, my mother gave me $10 that I knew was from my father to buy him a Father's Day gift. And I remember going to the PX on the base and just shopping around trying to find something for my father. I ultimately decided that my father really wanted a little statue of Snoopy. Right? But I remember in that quest, I got a little irritated because I thought, why didn't Dad just come down here with his own $10 and get what he wants? Why am I sitting here trying to figure it out, right? And of course, in my older age, I understood. My job was to take what is my father's and to add my love to it and give it back, right? And so the purpose of your life is to take this moment, take what is your father's, take what is your mother's, put your love into it, and offer it back. And just do that over and over and over again. You never have to do anything for the rest of your life. Just do it right now. And at the end of your life, when you pass away, you will have done it right now, 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 and then you died. But the rest of us will look at it and say, she was faithful her whole life long. We're the ones who will say you did it for your whole life. For you, you only did it in the moment, because this is all you've got, and this is all you can give. So give it, offer it, pick out that wonderful gift of your beloved by applying your love to this moment, expressing it freely and giving it back, and doing it again and again and again. In that is a fulfilling life. Fulfillment in life, the fulfillment of a life, is a byproduct. If you ever make it the goal, you will never have it. A fulfilling life is the byproduct of being what you are, living true to your nature. Doing nothing for anything but love, doing nothing from anything but wisdom, and doing nothing by any definition of yourself but being. Not being me, just being. And there's your freedom. There's the Sanatana Dharma. There's the way to be. All right? Any questions or corrections, concerns, good stories, an appropriate joke?
I wanted to ask a question, but I feel like everything you said is so beautiful. I didn't want to put any more words out there.
Oh, that's all right. Go ahead. Now we're going to mic them. Right, gotcha.
So in the Imitation of Christ that I've read, I know I can't find the specific time that it was said, but it refers to not taking refuge or counsel in men, but only of God. Mm-hmm. Does that contradict the importance of like Sangha at all? Or does it, because it sounds like that is the ideal, right? The highest level is to go to God for everything. So is it bad if we seek counsel with each other?
No, because how does God define Sangha? In the church, it's the body of Christ. So Sangha is the body of God, the manifestation of God. So taking refuge in the Sangha, holy company, as Thakur says, is one of the fastest ways to God, according to Sri Ramakrishna. You know, so take refuge in holy company, perfectly fine. You'll find your way that way. Take your refuge in prayer, you know, is another way of talking about it. But take refuge in God alone. Where is God? God is within your own self. Don't seek anything outside of your senses. Stay on this side of your senses. Right? Try to go before mind. Right? Before mind tells you a story. Before mind gives you a narrative. So take refuge. Everything else, the reason that that's true is because if you take refuge in anything else, it's not a refuge, it's not a safety, it's just a distraction. You know, if you're depressed, go to the shrine. If you go take a drink, that's just going to fix it, not even fix it, it's just going to make you unaware of it for 2 hours, 3 hours, and then you come to sober, and you've got a choice. You either have to decide, I'm going to take refuge in God this time, or I'm going to go get another drink, all right? And understand that that is the nature of everything of the senses. It will not last more than a few minutes. Every object outside of yourself has an expiration date. If it takes your whole life to get it, it's going to go away and you're going to need a whole other life to get it again. So learn the lesson immediately. Take refuge in nothing else. It will not last you. You know, boyfriends and girlfriends, they're great for the first few months. After that, they're work, right? Children are great and they become teenagers and then they're work. Cars are great until you get a scratch on it and you need a new one, right? Computers are great for exactly 1 year and then they're yesterday's product. It's like that with everything out there. So don't delude yourself. Go to that which does not change. Go to that steady current of love that gives you your existence, that provides your being.
I wanted to say I really liked your story about the party. And I was thinking about what you have in common with those people. And, you know, it really hit home when you were talking about becoming a monk and surrendering. Because I think of some of the wealthiest people that I know, and they have surrendered. Like, they have realized that the business they're in has a life of its own, that it's supposed to reach certain people, and maybe they thought it was going to be this kind of business or that, but then they're like, I am the vessel for this work. And so the flow happens that way. And so I'm just thinking of that party, and I mean, I don't know who was there, there's all kinds of wealthy people, just like there's all kinds of spiritual people.
Right.
But that commonality just struck home, like whether you're a monk or whether you're in real estate, like if you're in service of that flow, you're going to feel that spirit.
Right. Being in service of flow. Flow happens when there's no obstacle.
Yeah.
Right? Egoism is that obstacle. The thing that I had in common with everybody at that party is the fact that I am, and that I'm an expression of love, and that it's up to me how that comes out.
Well, it was such a practical story.
Yeah.
Too. So I just wanted to thank you for that, because it was just like so vulnerable and practical, and it just happened last night.
Yes.
So I think it's just such a great way of like, we can read scripture all we want, but that kind of translation is really
Yes.
amazing. So
Yes.
it's not so much a question, just like
Right.
your appreciation of like, I get it, thank you.
Awesome. Wonderful. I'm glad it was helpful. For sure. Anyone else? All right. Go forward. That's all. Fail 1,000 times, but get up and go forward. The only difference between a saint and a sinner is that when the sinner falls off the horse, he bemoans his state and doesn't get back on. The saint will always get back on the horse. So don't give up. Love always hopes, always believes, always trusts. Love never fails. And that is the divine, that is God. Hold him to it, hold her to it. Don't give up. Go forward. All right. Jai Ma, Jai Thakur, Jai Swami. Jai Jesus, Jai Buddha, Jai Rama, Jai you.